Практика все. Okay, welcome back. We are still at SOCHI AUTODROM. This time we are doing tandem battles. Of course, the qualification has finished. You can see the results in our Discord or on Telegram. But now it is time to find out who is the best in the top-32 format, which you're all probably familiar with. We're gonna have obviously the normal procedure. The top qualifier will be starting as a leader, and actually this is the first heat of our top 32. The Igor Rashkov, of course, our first qualifier, initiates. He's doing like his normal qualifying line, very wide, very sort of open for the chase driver, who is Gleb Bagatkin. He's playing like a catch-up game, Gleb. Pretty much all this run he had a bit of a pace difference compared to Igor, but managed to catch up to him using like slightly less angle and stuff like that. Yeah, and in the end managed to do that in a couple of crucial places. Like I said, in qualifying, one of the ways to do that is to catch up in touch and go 4/1, which is sort of a bit of a braking zone and an opportunity to maybe go a bit shallower than the leader, but then accelerate out of it and be door to door. Now they're of course switching places, and we'll see what Gleb can do maybe to upset Igor's chase. We initiate in quite a big angle, but goes shallow in touch and go 2. Igor's though is unfazed and still chasing him, giving him room to transition and then catching up to him in 4/1. Yeah, this is what I talked about. So it is that it probably like the deciding sort of place on the track. Igor managed it pretty much perfectly, and then now standing after the finish line to find out who's actually won and sort of proceed forward to the next stage of competition, which is going to be, of course, top 16. We're obviously having the drivers divided into groups, and each group sort of runs 8 drivers. We find out who is the strongest of the group, and they will proceed forward. So Igor, of course, got the win. He managed to do a much cleaner lead run than Gleb, and of course was unfazed in the chase by the couple of mistakes that Gleb made while leading. Yeah, this track is actually very good, well, in my opinion, for chasing. There are a couple of points where you can catch up if you've been left behind. You want to see that, because if you have something like a very fast track, think maybe VDC Silverstone 2005 layout A, it is for the most part very, very fast, and there are a lot of points on the track where you can make up for that lack of pace that maybe you're having because you have your car tuned differently, stuff like that. But here you have quite a lot of these like points, and also the cars, of course, they are very dependent on the tune that you make, but also they are sort of pretty good out of the box now that we have an updated version. Truth be told, yeah, as I already said, I'm nowhere near an expert driver, but I was having issues with the first version of the car pack. Like, the cars had very weird gear ratios, and maybe the grip was a bit too much for that sort of power that the cars make. But now I think they're in a very sweet spot where they have sort of like 500 horsepower. Meanwhile, our next run, which is going to be Roman Friedman, he's going on by himself, laying on banger of lead runs, to be honest. Being very close to the concrete blocks, snappy transition into 4/1, carrying it nicely all the way to the finish line. And doing some donuts there to celebrate. It is a buy run, and so buy run is judged on the basis of in real life your car's ability to actually make it to the line and initiate. Well, it does differ from one competition to another, but generally you have to make it to the initiation on your own. So yeah, engine has to be running, all that sort of thing. In sim, of course, we do not have these sort of problems, and yeah, it was piece of cake. Next up, we're gonna have our Brazilian friend going up against Dmitry. Both BMWs, but different generations of 3 Series, so an E36 and an E46. Interesting matchup, partly because none of the cars are BMW E92s. But anyway, running up to the initiation, big flick, and Dmitry maybe having some issues there catching up. But no, Montero had a bit of a moment there on the wall. He went way too hot into touch and go 3/1, and he's running very low angle. Dmitry catching up to him in the end. Montero having some issues navigating the track, and yeah, this is an opportunity to bring up competition rules. So after you've done your one run, of course, you turn around and go back to the start line, because just like in real drifting, you have to do 2 runs on one set of tires. So yeah, it is an opportunity for you to show maybe how you manage that tire if it actually doesn't last very long. There are certain scenarios where it doesn't. It does depend on the grip and your tire pressures, of course. So maybe if you do a lead run where you preserve the tire quite a lot, letting off the throttle in some moments and just not being way too aggressive, you preserve the tire. Of course, the chase driver in that circumstance will have the opportunity to catch up to you very easily, but you will have the tire life for the second part of the run to also chase very closely. Now we're gonna switch things around, and Dimitri's gonna be in the lead in his BMW E46 up against Montero in his E36. I'm not sure how the judges are gonna deem the, I think, violation, possibly, of the rules that were specifically covered on the briefing about just what I talked about. Returning to the start line in a specific manner. But probably, yeah, we have the go light, and they're off. Montero having some problems catching up to Dimitri on the run up to the initiation, which is interesting to see, but he cuts the course somewhat and, well, gets on his door. He does sacrifice a bit of angle, and well, messes up the transition a bit, but still catches up to Dmitry in the end of the run. The drivers are gonna pull up, turn around, and go back. Interesting, so it is Montero having, a line of his own there. But anyway, So, a couple of interesting things. Maybe Montero, like, you know, these cars, they have H-pattern gearboxes. They're not sequentials. They're not dog boxes either. So it's just a normal H-pattern gearbox with synchromesh. It is a synchromesh gearbox. So you have to shift it, well, provided you're driving on wheel and you have an actual gear shifter. But yeah, maybe he had a little bit of a moment where he sort of misshifted on the start-finish straight, and that's why he sort of fell behind while going after Dmitry, who managed to accelerate without any issues of that sort. But of course, that's just speculation, and my guess is for what has happened there. Of course, after that incident, Montero managed to catch up in Touch and Go 3/1 with quite a big dive, cutting up the course somewhat, yes. But you have to remember that the three criteria for chasing are proximity, angle, and line. I think in that order. It does depend, obviously, on what sort of competition you're in, but generally, the first thing that you can sacrifice is line. So you can, I think that's right. You can sacrifice, well, mostly you can sacrifice angle and line, pretty much the same. James Dean's famous for chasing in with a lot less angle than the lead driver. It is sort of, it's not necessarily his style, but it is something that he uses to win his runs. We have a next set of drivers ready on the line. It is going to be Emil and Oleg, who are driving an E92 Beamer in the case of Emil, and an E36, another one, in case of Oleg. And yes, they're accelerating. Emil with a fat transition across the track, but the initiation itself is lacking a bit because it didn't put that much angle, and it's also quite shallow in Touch and Go 3.3. But still, Oleg has to catch up, is having maybe some difficulties catching up to him at certain points of the track. We'll have to look at it again. Maybe the lead driver sort of did something to make Oleg maybe brake to avoid hitting him or something like that. But that's why the judges have all the inputs at their disposal. They can look at what each driver is doing at any given moment. But anyway, they are gonna switch it up, and it is go. This time, Oleg is closer to the wall and has a bigger angle. So this is so far looking like a better lead run, but also Emil is right there. He's getting room for the transition. It is a big one. Yeah, he pretty much stayed. It sort of ended prematurely, but so the rest of the run was very good by Oleg in terms of the lead. He was wide where it needed to be. He was on throttle at the moment where he was asked to be. And so, yeah, I mean, because of that, largely, you have to remember, you can't, well, it is a general saying in drifting, you can't have a good lead or a good chase without a good lead. And so that was just proven to us by this. Let's run by these two gentlemen who demonstrated, on one hand, a very good lead and a very good chase. The judges, of course, will be looking at that contact at the very end, which was sort of the big upset, because if it wasn't for that, it would be a very clean run by both of them. But that sort of messed it up, and Emil won, actually, as a result, because I think largely because of the mistake by Oleg in the lead. Next up, we're gonna have Igor Rashkov and Roman Friedman. Roman in his Nissan Silvia S15, and Igor, of course, our top qualifier in the BMW E92. So two of the most popular cars here going up against each other. And Igor, again, demonstrating, at least on the initiation, why he's the top qualifier, going very, very wide. But also Roman is catching up to him on the transitions and staying with him. And there's a bumper-to-bumper transition into touch and go 4/1, which is always a great sight. Maybe sacrificing again a bit of angle in the last corner there. But all in all, Roman was very close. And, well, credit where it's due, Igor, again, very consistent, right on point, no sort of going wider than he needs to, or, you know, checking up, brake checking. At least I haven't seen any of that. And, yeah, they're going to switch things around and see whether Roman can put as good of a lead run as Igor just did, and maybe upset the standings by taking out the top qualifier. So far, yeah, Igor can, he's just sort of rocketed into that transition and caught up with Roman very quickly. Again, just as Roman maybe sacrificing a bit of angle in this at the start of the last corner, but the crucial bit of chasing is proximity. So if you can keep close to the leader, that's the thing that matters the most. Then, of course, the judges are looking at how much angle have you sacrificed, how much cutting the track have you done in order to keep that close to the leader. But yeah, very, very good set of runs. We have Igor again demonstrating why he's the top qualifier. Roman maybe a little bit slightly was in the lead somewhat because of the first corner, because I'm not entirely sure that he was within track limits in touch and go to, but again, I'm just a commentator, I'm not a judge. And Igor, yeah, staying up with him and charging, which was the best thing, charging in onto the door on transitions, and that's what mattered. He managed to stay with him, not sacrifice much angle. He wasn't driving like, you know, perpendicular to Roman's car, and the judges, as a result of that, the judges are taking more time than it was with previous runs to decide who had the upper hand in that in that heat. Obviously, in that sense, like, there is an old saying, the longer it takes for the judges to figure out who's the winner, the higher the chance of a one more time is. We'll see whether that's true in this case, or maybe they're just, obviously, when the runs are that good, the judges are going to be looking at the very tiny mistakes, small corrections and stuff like that, to just determine who has maybe a little bit of an edge on the opponent. And well, so far they're still discussing. Meanwhile, yeah, I think as a result of the qualification, the judges on the briefing for tandems had to say that a lot of the runs are going to be determined on the initiation because, as it was extensively covered, for quali, the initiation has to be snappy and sort of like all in, a lot of risk, a lot of commitment, but in quali, a lot of the drivers just sort of ignored that and played it safe, and that's really not what they were asked to do. So, yeah, it is gonna come down mostly, I think, down to that, who can do a better initiation. Yeah, and as I said, the longer it takes for them to figure out, the higher the chance of one more time, and in this case, it is one more time. And they are going straight at it again. Of course, after the runs, you switch things around just as it was initially, so Igor will be leading again because he won the qualification runs, and Roman's gonna give it chase. Again, big entry by Igor, and Roman getting lost somewhat and driving in with very little angle there to catch up to him. And Boo makes contact on the transition, just miscalculated it a bit. Maybe the S15 is a new car to him, I'm not quite sure, and he just sort of doesn't know exactly where his car ends and his opponent's car starts. So yeah, with that much of an advantage coming Yegor's way, Roman is going to have to pull off something close to a miracle to still win this battle. Yegor there maybe going a little bit earlier than Roman, not to let him drive away, and Roman hitting the wall there on initiation, going very shallow on in touch and go 2, but Yegor is still giving him a very hard time, chasing very closely and transitioning very closely, checking up there a bit in touch and go 4/1, but still finishing very close. And I think this time round it is a much easier job for the judges to determine who is gonna go into the next round of competition and who's gonna be, unfortunately, out. Yeah, it was just a bit of a moment. I think Roman, after the first set of runs, he decided that he needed, of course, more commitment and more sort of a wow effect, X factor, and he tried to pull that off again, as I said, on the initiation, because that is a place where it sort of was decided. Yeah, and Igor, as a result, gets the win and advances on to top 16. Next up, we're gonna have, I think, a rerun of Montero and Emil. Who are gonna again determine who is the stronger of them. Montero again, contact there on the initiation, possibly. I'm gonna have to look at it again. But yeah, each sort of over-rotated and couldn't continue, which is gonna be a 0. It's just, it comes down to who was responsible for that 0. Was the leader at fault all by himself, or was it the chase driver's fault, or was it like joint effort or something? But Montero just sort of, it seemed like Emil win. Yeah, that judges are saying that Emil got the win and he has to do a bye run because Montero, I think, disconnected. Again, bye run, just do initiation, so at this point, he's already the winner. He's completed his run. He could probably just sort of leave it there and not continue on forward. But he decides to use this opportunity as practice, which of course he's allowed to do, and it's a good thing because the more you drive, probably the better you are. Up until, of course, a certain point where you just sort of overdrive and you are a bit tired from doing all of that. Unless you're on controller, which all these drivers are, which doesn't require nearly as much effort. Anyway, so we're going to have a matchup of two E92s. This was inevitable that the most popular car in this competition is going to be present on both sides. And you got the qualification winner from early on is giving the lead to Emil, who has, again, to sort of drive with less angle to catch up to Igor, who's, again, very, very consistent. His runs are not necessarily like exactly the same way, but very, very close to each other in terms of the angle that he does, the line that he does, and the speed. So I think that just further confirms that he's the winner of quali, not just by luck, but because he was the best driver to complete this course. And they're gonna switch things around, and Emilio's gonna try to to show Igor that he got into top 32 again because he can drive quite well, but Igor is very, very close. He's again not compromising his line, he's not compromising his angle, he's just there the whole time. And you can see, like, obviously you can chase in different manners. You can do front wheel to back wheel, you can do front wheel to front wheel, or front wheel to the door. And usually in most competitions, it does give you different outcomes. So if you chase front wheel to back wheel, that is not as good as front wheel to front wheel. Of course, like, if your cars are pretty much parallel, that is the best case scenario. And Igor got the win, advancing further on. Yeah, Emil there had solid runs, but it just wasn't enough to dethrone the #1 qualifier from earlier on. And as a result, Igor is in the he has beaten every single driver in his group. So, advancing on to the top 4, I believe. Yeah, we're gonna see, like, how these top qualifiers like Igor and Ilnur, how they deal with tandems, because of course driving on your own is not the same as driving with other people, especially with tandems on a track that is new to, cars that are new to competitive driving, and a track which is also sort of brand new. There have been other versions of it, but they're obviously somewhat different. And looking at how things will play out in the sort of second group out of the 4 groups that we have in total, which obviously make for a complete top 32. We're gonna have drivers like Igor Motorny and Daniil MAKAROV In the second group, trying to figure out who is the strongest of them all. Again, some in terms of cars, we have some E92s, a very unique one in this group, which is an RX-7, a rotary RX-7. And well, Daniel MAKAROV is also driving his own car, which is an S15. He told me that it is pretty much the ultimate true Japanese S15. And I'm not sure it's going to help him, beat his opponents, but it's surely, like, in terms of style and all of that, he is right, and it is a very beautiful car to look at. Other noticeable drivers here, we have well, of course we have Azamat, who's driving a Lexus. I think we figured out in quali it is probably the third most popular car. And to my delight, we have Kirill in his Toyota Mark II, which is only one of 2 examples in this round of competition. And our first tandem is underway. It is going to be the Mark II of Kirill and the Lexus of Kuskov Alexander. Kirill having a gangster entry as a chase driver, which is interesting to see, but blocking the transition into touch and go 4/1, which upsets the leader's line, but they still sort of ignore it and carry on forward. It could have been better, but yeah, Kirill there having to catch up in the area of touch and go 3/1, 3/2, and 3/3. And maybe, yeah, again, miscalculated his sort of car position when transitioning to touch and go 4/1. It is going to be a major point to look at for the judges, of course, to decide who is going to be the winner. So in some sense, of course, Alexander there has an advantage going into the second part of this heat. And Kirill there giving... Ooh, he's going off the track. But one tire, which is, well, a big penalization, but still they carry on forward. And Alexander there sacrificing a bit of angle to catch up in the last corner and giving him a well, sort of crashing into him after the run. So Kirill made, again, a couple of mistakes. So going off the track is probably the most notable one. In quali, that gave you -5 points for line. And in tandems, it of course matters quite a lot, because yes, as a chase driver, it is your responsibility to make it safe somewhat. So you have to follow the leader. Yes, he goes off. It is his mistake. There's no denying that. But if you are just sort of being nowhere close because you think he's going off, and then you're just, holding back and stuff like that, it's not going to give you any bonus points. It's pretty much the opposite. If you're doing like a high commitment run, the leader is going off and you're still at it, it is, of course, a lot better than just sort of being nowhere and blaming the leader. So yeah, as a result, Alexander does get the win and advances on to top 16. Meanwhile, our next drivers, which are going to be Azamat and Ivan, and cars they're driving are a Lexus and an E92. Azamat there with a very good initiation, just pretty much as the judges advised the drivers to do, and Ivan there being not that close, even though he does sort of sacrifice angle in the last corner. He catches up to Azamat only in the last clipping point, the very last clipping point, 4/3. So interesting to see this sort of pace difference in the cars. But maybe Azamat has just spent a lot more time fine-tuning his Lexus/Altezza to make it go faster. But anyway, so when he's going to give chase, probably he's going to be more comfortably on the door of Ivan, and it shows in the very first corner. But there was a bit of a check-up by Ivan there. Azamat just maybe staying in it a bit too late, transitioning, making up ground, lost ground, and that was a closer chase, but not really sure about the lead, whether it was as good as Azamat's lead, because of course Azamat had a great initiation in his lead and was pretty much being as wide as he could on the concrete blocks, on the wall there, and in the last corner. And the only sort of issue he had in the chase was maybe, as I said, staying in that pocket for a bit too long there in the first corner and up until the second touch and go, and he sort of didn't let Ivan go a bit further to transition and then be close on his door again. Maybe that's sort of the only mistake he made in the chase position. But he was close pretty much throughout the entirety of the track. And I wouldn't necessarily say the same about Ivan, because he did quite a lot to catch up to Azamat. As I said, there was a pace difference there. But sort of couldn't really do it convincingly, so he didn't, make one move to jump on the door and then stay there. He made many moves, and the only time he made it stick was the very last corner and the last part of the last corner. But nevertheless, judges are taking that time to decide who was the better of the two drivers, and interesting what they're looking at there. Maybe it was the transition that I talked about, the transition from touch and go 2 to touch and go 3/1. And Azamat got the win. As I said, his lead was probably better from the very start, because again, initiation is a very big part of this track, and a very big part of the scoring system. Next up, we're going to have Daniil Makarov. I talked about his car earlier, the S15 with flashing lights, and Daniil Kozlov in the Nissan Laurel. So the drivers there sitting at the line, revving their engines, waiting for one of the judges to give them a call. Noticeably, both are running the Evo engine, the 4G63. It is a 2-liter turbocharged engine, and Daniil, going into big angle, but sort of has to adjust it through touch and go 2, playing with the throttle to still make all the touch and goes on the wall. And Kozlov there is trying everything he can to catch up, but he just sort of is slower. So they have the same engine, well, not necessarily exactly the same, but probably the same in terms of the tuning, and the pace difference is there. So Makarov is going into the second part of this run with an advantage, I would say, because he managed to do a clean run, lead run, without sort of any wrongdoings, and Kozlov just couldn't catch him. And as for the second part, Kozlov initiates very, very wide there, and maybe contact on the transition, I think, there. But Makarov transitioning very closely into touch and go 4/1 and following him nicely. I think maybe he sort of understood that he had a bit of an advantage coming in to the second part of the heat, but they are returning to the start line for some reason. Anyway, yeah, I think Makarov's lead was very good. Maybe apart from the bit where he sort of corrected the car in Touch and Go 2. And well, Kozlov's lead was also like really nice, and he had a very wide line in the first corner, just big angle. It was all there, and unless the contact on the first transition was sort of NAT code or something, it is going to be probably Makarov's mistake, but I'm not too sure about that. And well, just as with the previous runs, the judges are taking their time deciding who is going to advance further. But it is an interesting matchup in terms of like the chassis, because again, the S15 is considered to be the golden standard in terms of the wheelbase, suspension configuration, all of that. And the L'Oreal, well, it isn't considered that. But they have the same engine, and I think largely, I'm not too sure about the modding stuff and so on. But a lot of people in real life do sort of swap their suspension, all the links, all the control arms and so on, to Nissan Silvia control arms and stuff, because again, it is a golden standard, and it doesn't really matter what sort of thing you drive, or it does, but not necessarily always. You can make changes to your car, to the structure of it, to fit the Silvia parts and make it handle like a Silvia, largely. The same way you can also, of course, do with any other car. So, like for instance, in the Russian Drift Series, Anton Kozlov has BMW F-22, so a 2 Series, but he's running, I think, what is it, the front... the differential? No, not differential. Well, something out of a Toyota Supra. I was going to say something, but then I forgot what component of a Toyota Supra is installed in his BMW F-22. So you can make these changes to make the car handle like a certain thing that you sort of look up to as a perfect handling car. For years and years it has been a Nissan Silvia, so people do Nissan Silvia knuckles and so on, and it doesn't really matter what sort of S chassis you take the parts from. What matters is that they are parts from an S chassis. So, and it specifically applies to front suspension. It's not so much about the rear suspension or stuff like that. It is mostly about the front, because that's what makes the car handle in a particular way the most. Again, the old saying applies here as well. The judges took a lot of time to decide who was better, and they are going at it again. It is going to be one more time there between Daniil Makarov and Daniil Kozlov. So yeah, Kozlov is staying up with him on the run up to the initiation, and Makarov going wide, maybe too ballsy of a move there. But Kozlov losing some grounds, having to avoid hitting the wall in touch and go 3/2, but catching up to Makarov there in the last sector. Interesting that, just as with the matchup from before, that once you get an OMT, the drivers try to turn everything up to 11 and sort of go all in to take the edge over the opponent, maybe with the initiation, maybe with some transitions, and it doesn't necessarily always end well, because, well, as you could see, running wide there, Makarov was in the first run, so let's see what Kozlov can do in the lead. Maybe not that much angle as expected, not as much angle as expected from him, but still it didn't run wide. So far getting all the clipping points, and I think there was a vault up there. It didn't upset the car's handling too much. And they are turning around and going back. So yeah, in this case, I think Daniil Kozlov actually had maybe a better temper in this regard, that he didn't sort of freak out and go way too fast into the first corner, or didn't make any silly mistakes. Other than that, which is, well, of course, a big part of the scoring criteria of, like, how can you manage these one more times, these sort of upping up the stakes moments. But again, just taking their time, thinking about who's gonna advance on, and yeah, Kozlov has like a pro car. I think this one isn't a pro car, but he does have a pro Sylvia S15 as well. It looks exactly the same. It's like a 1001 horsepower or something. So yeah, some of these drivers do have a lot of experience in VDC level cars, be it VDC public car packs or some things that they've done by themselves. Of course, if you have unencrypted mods in Assetto Corsa, you can make pretty much any changes you want to the cars, be it the textures, the body of the car. You can make there are some SVDS drivers cars which are very funny, because they are something like, I don't remember the name of the driver, but there is a guy who drives a Toyota Supra Mark IV, and he has a Tesla front end, which is hilarious to me. When my brother saw it, he was like, "What are we doing here?" And well, I agree with him on this point. It is very strange, but sort of in these competitions where a lot of people run the same car, you do want to differentiate yourself from all the other drivers, be it with a striking livery, which sometimes isn't enough, because at the very top level, these guys, a lot of them pay someone else to do their livery, and the guys know what they're doing, so the livery just isn't that much to make yourself stand out. But what you can also do is do like a different body. SVDS drivers do have I think, two other cars which are very funny. There is one, Daniel MAKAROV actually got the win. Interesting. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not too sure why, but anyway. So our next matchup is gonna be the unique Mazda RX-7 driven by Igor Motorny and Alexander. They're giving chase in his BMW E92. Oh, bit of contact and going off the track as the chase driver and as a lead driver as well. I think Igor Motorny there in Touch and Go 4/1 went a bit off track. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. So the leader did make some mistakes, especially if you look at the touching the wall area, like Touch and Go 3/3, and sort of the bit before it. You do have a situation where the leader sort of scrapes the wall and maybe loses a bit of speed, has to correct the car, and because the chase driver is following him very closely, there is pretty much inevitably, contact made, and it is a difficult sort of decision who is to blame for that unfortunate event, in the sense that, you know, the leader did make a mistake crashing, but also the chase driver didn't really do anything to like avoid him. Anyway, for the second part, Igor there having pretty much no issues catching up, but was straightening out almost and Touch and Go 4/2. That's interesting. I don't necessarily know why he was like that desperate to be there. Maybe, well, we did have a pace difference in the very beginning of the run, so the transition into 4/1 was good, but it was just, he sort of lost the car a bit at an understeer moment, and because of that he had to straighten out, well, the car straighten out, he had to kick it back into angle, and that is gonna be, you know, quite a disadvantage for him in that sense. But we have our next matchup, which is gonna be two Lexuses, and Azamat there having, I don't know why he was that far away, but Kuskov Alexander is running his lead line, obviously like nothing happened, because he has to pay absolutely no attention to what's going on behind him. So there is a bit of a strange thing. So they started. So Azamat started earlier, but had a moment, I think maybe again misshifts or just turbo lag moment, and yeah, not being able to be close where it mattered. We have Alexander back at the start line waiting for Azamat to return and you know, give chase to him. So it is already like big advantage coming Alexander's way, because it is there was quite a bit of separation coming into the first touch and go, and subsequently the next couple of zones. So we'll see how he plays it out. This card as a lead driver, he was initiating very late, and as a result running wide there in Touch and Go 2 and adjusting the car in Touch and Go 3/2, which is not something I really want to do. But Alexander is still giving him chase, slightly less angle, but still staying up with him. So Azamat already was in a disadvantage, and again, I'm going to talk about this time and time again, that when you're at a disadvantage, psychologically you're trying to make sort of something very out of the box, maybe even something ballsy to upset the weight and make the advantage come your way. But as we've seen from pretty much all the runs today, it hasn't paid out for anyone who's tried it. So maybe it's really not the way. Go. Anyway, Daniil Makarov and Alexander Lazarenko are going, ooh, crash there into the wall for Daniil Makarov. Cutting up the track for Alexander Lazarenko to catch up to Daniil Makarov, but still having issues matching the pace of Daniil Makarov. Maybe he was just a little bit cautious, having that crash at turn 1 in mind. I wouldn't blame him, of course, because in the end you have to win, and you know, being quite cautious after your opponent made a mistake, a significant one at that, is not the thing you can blame someone for. But anyway, they're gonna now switch places, and Daniil Makarov is gonna try to upset Alexander Lazarenko in some way. But a clean initiation this time from Lazarenko, and Makarov losing some grounds to the lead driver, but making it up in touch and go 3/2. Although I have to admit that Lazarenko probably had a bit of a checkup there, but Makarov still was able to sort of hold it, not crash into him, and continue the run. Interesting. I think this time maybe just again a little bit of miscalculation in terms of the car's width, length, and something like that, because Makarov did crash into the wall there. There's no denying that. Yeah, I think obviously that little moment, well, it wasn't very little moment, that mistake by Makarov is going to be sort of the thing that determines his fate, almost, I would say. And the judges will again evaluate, and well, they did, and Alexander actually got the win, and that's the end of the event for Daniil Makarov. So maybe an unfortunate exit, not very far into the top 32, but still, he can come back stronger. And we're starting off another matchup, which is going to be Kuskov Alexander and Alexander Lazarenko. Bit shallow there for Kuskov though in touch and go 2, but going very wide in touch and go 3/1/2/3, which is just what you sort of needed to do. Alexander there, oh, I mean the chaser, they're both Alexanders, following him pretty closely, but you know, these couple of moments just where the leaders made some mistakes have made Lazarenko just back out of it a bit, especially obviously the first corner where Kuskov went with a big angle and not so much speed, so he had to rely on left foot braking a lot, and that of course upsets the chase driver greatly. But anyway, now Kuskov Alexander is gonna be chasing and trying to maybe make up for those mistakes he made in the lead. Lazarenko there doing a much better job at the first corner than Kuskov did, and well, still Alexander is like wide, predictable, and well, I mean, yeah, Lazarenko was a lot better in the lead, but to be fair, Kuskov follows him closely everywhere. And again, at this point, you do remember that old saying, without a great lead, you can't have a great chase. And in this case, Lazarenko did have a really good lead. And so that allowed Kuskov to get up close and personal on the door and, follow him everywhere, which is... gonna be an advantage to, I think, Lazarenko in terms of, comparing lead to lead, which is a way to judge, of course. If you don't know, judging is largely done comparing lead to lead, chase to chase. So when judges are going to take a look at the leads of these both Alexes, they're going to see that Kuskov had a big moment there in turn one, having to left foot brake and upsetting the chase driver. And meanwhile, Lazarenko had a very clean lead run and didn't have any sort of moments where he would sort of make the chase driver back out of it, not to crash into the leader. And that is, of course, a thing you want to see. Like clean runs, no checkups, no sort of malicious little cowardly moves maybe to upset the chase driver and have an advantage. Of course, it is something that real-life drivers do quite a lot. These handbrake pulls from time to time that just, slow down the car just as much as you need for the chase driver to think he's going to crash and back out of the pocket. And those little things, if they are unnoticed by the judges, of course, make these drivers win heats, then events, and maybe possibly even championships. There have been a couple of drivers who were sort of, and still are, hated for that reason. Or maybe just some moves that were, obnoxious and incomprehensible. Some, like Madfield, I think, was memed for being a bit of a terrorist when it came to chase driving. He crashed into a couple of people in the last season. I think it was last season. Or maybe the one before that, I'm not too sure. Time flies by very fast. Because he sort of went in too hot at pretty much every transition that he made. I think one of the incidents that I remember was Long Beach with Frederick Harsbow, where he crashed, and it was quite a big crash. So it wasn't like, a fender bender. It was a proper crash. And obviously knowing that Harsbow is Papadakis Racing driver, and they are somewhat backed by Gazoo Racing and all of that. They do have spares, they do have the mechanics, probably one of the best mechanic, some of the best mechanics in the world when it comes to drifting. And, well, they didn't have much of a problem repairing that car. Madfield doesn't have, as far as I know, that much of a team to really do it. Anyway. We are going to be doing Group 3 now, which is, well, again, some Beamers, some S chassis, stuff like that. And Elnur Simbayev, who was second place qualifier, actually is in this group. So it is going to be interesting to see whether he can manage to do the same thing as Igor did in his first group, where he sort of demolished everyone and got into top 4. So yeah, you will be able to, if you want to watch the how everything unfolds in terms of top 32, top 16, who's going up against who. You can do so by going on Discord or our Telegram, and there is going to be a link where you can see all the decisions in real time, who's advancing, who's driving, everything like that. It is, of course, very useful because we don't have, that sort of thing at all times, and well, there is a reason for that. But anyway, the next group is going to be underway very soon. We're going to have drivers like, Bira, Ilnur, Andrei Popov, Alexei Nishradin, and, Ramil, Grigory Trigorotsov, who was one of the top qualifiers, especially when it came to Group 1, he was pretty much the best, I would say. We're gonna have, of course, interesting matchup because there are a couple of people who are quite close in qualifying, which is, of course, what you want to see. And not just, having runs that are people are quite far away from each other. So in terms of how it's all playing out, we have obviously the first pair of top 4 already decided is going to be Igor, our top qualifier, against Alexander Kuskov, who was the best out of the second group of drivers. Now we're moving on to the right side of the grid and looking at the third group to decide who's going to be the first of the second pair in top 4. Whether it's going to be Ilnur by the same sort of logic that Igor was the top driver in the first group because he was a top qualifier. We'll see, because Ilnur is the first one to lead, of course, because he was second in quali and first in his group. Going very wide there, but within track limits, of course, and doing a very good job at maintaining that sort of true or not, but yeah, again, very good lead run, big commitment, especially on the initiation, which is sort of the area where it counts the most. and just the sort of thing that's expected from Ilnur. And now Evgeny Parshin is gonna lead Ilnur for a second run. Sitting at line there, Ilnur, they're not giving him an inch. Initiating very close, immediately cutting some angle to catch up to Evgeny Parshin, who's crashed into the wall. And, well, Ilnur's crashing into him then on his own, and maybe making a bit of contact in touch and go 4/1. It's a very aggressive chase, probably the most aggressive chase we've seen so far in this round. Obviously, quite a lot of things to look at here. So Ilnur straightening out on his lead run before the end and stuff like that. But we are already going for the next pair, which is Peter versus Alexei. And Peter is... Oh, he has corrected a lot and caused the chase driver to crash into him. I think, again, a big mistake there, because the judges extensively said that the leader has to maintain the same angle from touch and go 3/3 up until the transition to 4/1. So in that regard, that is quite a bit of a mistake on Peter's side. It's a good thing that they continued, because, of course, you know, in real life, there is some basis for just crashing out and calling it a day at that point. So, if someone's crashed into you or caused you to crash, you could spin to win or stuff like that. It's a good thing they didn't do it. Anyway, Peter now giving chase. Very close in the first corner, setting up his transition, being there on the door, so his front wheel to the door. Very close, a very good transition. He's doing like pretty much parallel to the leader. This is a very good chase. But obviously, you have to think, if that chase is sort of making you forget that Peter did have a mistake in his lead run, that's a good thing. But of course, the judges cannot sort of forget and take anything out of the equation. Everything is sort of adding up into the final result. Actually, I've just noticed that we have, if the flags are correct, both our drivers are international, which is always a treat to see. Kazakhstan and Finland. Interesting. Anyway, we are gonna have, you know, judges evaluate what's what mistake weighs what, and you know, how to sort of sum this all up into a decision. But yeah, I think this chase run by Peter was one of the best runs we've seen so far, the best chase runs that we've seen. In terms of Alexei's lead run, it was good. It was good. I don't think it was anything like exceptional, but that doesn't necessarily make it bad, of course, because exceptional is called exceptional because it's everything like above expectations and standards and so on. You don't necessarily have to be exceptional in the lead, because as it was again stated in the driver's briefing for tandems, that the chase run affects the result more than the lead run. So if you are following very closely, making bold moves, and just risking it throughout pretty much the whole run, that does pay out in the end when you see the results of the heat, because that's something that, you know, originates back in the day in D1 GP, where sort of pre computer nonsense days, because of course in the 2010s D1 GP started using computers to evaluate how many points each driver gets for each run. So in every heat there would be points awarded to the leader and to the chaser, and then they obviously swap places, do it again, and then you have a sum of two scores that you got for your runs, and the better score wins. Anyway, we now have another matchup. It is going to be Igor Kiba and Ramil Hakimov, Nissan Sylvia S15 and Alexis IS200. Igor there having to adjust his line to still go wide in touch and go 3-0, and being very shallow because of a messy transition there in 4/1. But Ramil still following him nicely, and they are gonna, of course, try to well, each of them is gonna try to replicate the best run from qualifying when it comes to leading. But Igor there having some mistakes. He left foot braked quite heavily in the first corner, and then again in second corner to make to collect all the touch and goes, and then had a very messy transition into touch and go 4/1, which of course caused the chase driver some problems. But we'll see how it plays out when they switch places. Well, actually, it seems like it's gonna be a rerun for some reason. Anyway, so now, yeah, Igor going wide without as much of left foot braking and stuff, and having a much better transition to touch and go 4/1, which is well, a much better version of the lead run he did previously. So first corner again fixed, no hard left foot braking to still make the second touch and go. The mistake in the second corner, when talking about touch and go, is 3/2 specifically, because in the previous run that was the most sort of difficult part for him. Yeah, now let's see what Igor can do in the chase position. The white light, which is the start light, is on, and Ramil is leading. Very safe initiation there again. The judges said that they're looking at something very snappy, something very committed, and that just didn't look like it. But still, Igor having big problems catching up with Ramil, making mistakes as well. He just transitioned to 4/1 and pretty much stalled the car, having to accelerate again while Ramil didn't have to brake as much. So interesting in that regard. But anyway, I think just maybe a bit too many mistakes by Igor. Also, he just sort of lacked pace in general. Like, you could see he was like catching up. Igor was lacking pace. That's what I meant. And then, well, in the leads, it's sort of when Igor actually pulled himself together, it was a pretty good lead. But still, when we take into account that chase runs are more important than lead runs, not in the sense that you can do a sloppy lead run and then just rely only on the chase run to advance forward. No, I mean in the sense of the scoring criteria, yeah. So, if you take that into account, Igor just sort of is in a bit of a disadvantage because his chase was definitely worse than Ramil's because he was compromised trying to get on the inside of the track at all times. But yeah, Ramil, as a result of that, gets the win, advances on. Meanwhile, we have our next matchup, which is going to be Grigory Tserigorodtsov and Andrei Popov in the two most popular cars of the event, the S15 and an E92. Ooh, aggressive initiation there, but Popov getting on the doors pretty much straight on, but again having to catch up Tserigorodtsov in the second part of the track. Ooh, too much angle there for Tserigorodtsov. Way too snappy. I'm not sure if the judges are gonna deem it as an unchaseable run. If you don't know what that is, if the lead driver does something that makes chasing unsafe or just straight up impossible, like, you know, pretty much slowing down to stop, or going to insane angles all the time, which are, you know, which are exceeding the specified parameters set by the judges. The run can be deemed as unchaseable. Anyway, Popov now leading, and he's very hot into the first corner, still somehow makes it, but I think he was off throttle there for quite a long time, which caused Tserigorodtsov to back out of it. Popov now adjusting his car, making it to the last corner, and Tserigorodtsov not having the pace to match Popov's, you know, acceleration out of touch and go 4/1. So a couple of bad, you know, quite significant mistakes on both sides there. So you got lots of possibly having a zero, that is the big one, of course. But also, you know, Popov having somewhat of a weird initiation, or at least to me it is. Well, not the initiation itself, but the bit after that, because you're supposed to be on throttle after the line, which obviously makes it so that you are on the throttle when throughout touch and go 1 and 2, but he was just sort of way too fast when it comes to touch and go 1, and then sort of having to adjust his throttle inputs greatly to still make touch and go 2, and that is, you know, a compromise. But still, Andrei Popov won because I think Tserigorodtsov's mistake of pretty much stalling there on the track with an over-rotation is worse than the mistake that Popov made. Next up, we're gonna have a classic battle in a certain way, because it is an SR20 powered Sylvia of Ilnur versus an LS3 powered E46 of Alexei, and Alexei making a big dive there on the door of Ilnur's S14, but causing contact there on the transition, having again to sort of pick up the pace to still stay with him, but he sort of failed to do so. Interesting, but you know, the start of the run was actually very good because he managed to initiate quite close to the leader and make a big dive on the door when it came to touch and go 3/1. But in the end, it was just all sort of, well, it wasn't pointless, but it was sort of all counter, sort of, he made a mistake that was worse than the positives that he did. Anyway, so now Alexei is in the lead and he's going wide in the first corner already. Ignored there, sacrificing some angle to catch up to him in touch and go 3/2, making room for the transition, unlike Alexei, and giving very close chase in the last corner as well. So I think it's pretty clear, like, who's going to be the winner, but again, what do I know? I'm not a judge, but Ilnor there having a better lead and also a better chase, which I think you don't have to be a mathematician to understand that it probably makes him, well, a more likely winner. Again, we return to the topic of, you know, being pushed to the limit when it comes to Alexei and making mistakes because of that. So Alexei decided that he needed to do a banger of a lead to have any sort of a opportunity to equal out the odds. And he just sort of failed to do so. He overcooked it, went too fast into the first corner, and dropped some tires on the outside, like right away, pretty much. That's the very start of the track. The judges taking their time, but we have a winner. As I said, Ilnur having the upper hand in both runs of the heat. It does add up to him winning and advancing on. And next up, we're gonna have another matchup, which is gonna be, I think, Andrei Popov driving a BMW E92 again, and you know, Ramil Hakimov driving a Lexus IS200. Andrei's gonna be leading, and Ramil's gonna give chase. So Ramil there being a bit to the back to have the chance here to go on green instead of white, so maybe take his opportunity. Anyway, big entry from Andrei, and wow, Ramil is trying to catch up to him. Cutting up the course. Oh, he went a bit too deep in that 4/1 touch and go, and that caused him to sort of drop out even more. But, you know, a bit of a shame because he did like pretty much everything he could to catch up to Andrei, but in the end it just sort of wasn't enough. Again, Andrei may be having some checkups there, especially in the first corner, I'm not sure, but you can usually judge whether someone is going full throttle or whatever by how much smoke the back tire emits. So if the driver is going full throttle, there's going to be a lot of smoke there, and if the smoke trail sort of goes and disappears, he's not. Anyway, so Andrei is now chasing, and he is very close. But is he going to give room? No! He didn't give any room for the transition when it came to touch and go 4/1. And that is going to be a big mistake for for the chase driver, and something that will probably, again, decide his fate. Because not giving room to the leader to transition is a very significant mistake. But not only do you crash into him, but you sort of impede him and you don't allow him to carry on forward. So yeah, as a result of Andre's very aggressive driving, I mean, they're sort of had a big moment and couldn't continue on driving his line. If we add up the mistakes on each side, I would say probably that Andre is in a disadvantage, because that mistake, blocking the leader, is very significant. It is gonna be sort of like, again, I say this thing time and time again, is going to be the deciding factor whether, actually try to carry on after the crash, or he just sort of it's not spin to win, but sort of pretend that you can't drive anymore. I don't think that's the case, but still, the judges have to look at all these things to see all the inputs, all the sort of points of contact, all of that. Because some of the people who are driving in sim, also in real life as well, are masking their sort of moves very well, and it's hard to determine whether something was malicious or not, or maybe it's just not malicious, but still a mistake that is causing the other party to, end their run. Blocking the transition doesn't necessarily qualify as a malicious move pretty much at any point, because, especially in real life, blocking the transition, of course, means that you're going to have contact, so you're going to damage your car, and no one's going to damage the car on purpose to ruin the other driver's run, which of course also makes it your mistake. So that would be idiotic to do that. But again, just like in circuit racing, if you do something, if you make a mistake, it is a mistake. It doesn't matter whether it's malicious or it's an accident and you didn't really mean it. The fact is that it is a mistake, and it will be penalized. It's just like the same. I'm a big fan of Jimmy Broadbent, and he has a series called Sim Racing Stewards, where he looks at incidents posted on the Sim Racing Stewards subreddit. And a lot of these are malicious, but also a lot of these are just driving mistakes. And it doesn't change the fact. Maybe the fact that you intended to do something, like intended to wreck another driver, it does add to the severity of your punishment, but the innocence of your motives doesn't free you from the responsibility of causing another driver to crash, for instance. But in this case, the judges are taking quite some time to decide who is going to be the winner. Meanwhile, we have Ilnur pulling up to the line for his next run. And so far, I don't want to jinx it, but so far, Ilnur is looking like pretty much a carbon copy of Igor in the first group. He is sort of taking his opponents one by one and not giving them any chances. We are gonna see whether he can make it past Ramil, who is also, he had a difficult path up to this moment, but he did go through all his opponents well. Ilnur there not having a lot of angle. I think Maybe he could do with a bit more than that. But anyway, Ramil is still following him not very closely, I have to say. Maybe North's car is just that bit faster. I have no real way of telling. It does seem like that. It's another sort of classic battle between an SR20 and a 2JZ. But another thing you have to remember is that these engines make pretty much the same amount of power. Or at least in this scenario. So now when they change positions, the question is, what strategy will Ilnur choose? Will he be like all in, just pushing Ramil? Yes, he is. Yeah, he is. But ooh, that transition was very sexy. He was just that close to the rear bumper. He's driving very cleverly, I have to say, because of course he can be like very aggressive and just drive like your trousers are on fire, but a lot of these sort of attempts at being Georgia Chivchan end up with you in the wall or in another driver's car. I mean, I don't mean as a passenger, I mean literally your car being now a part of the other driver's car because you wrecked it so hard. But sort of driving cleverly but still being aggressive is obviously the quality of a very, very good driver. Because if you can sort of evaluate where to position your car at each moment and you know, be close to the other driver, it is immensely powerful tool being able to do that. Ilnur demonstrated that, and as a result, he is, as I said in the very beginning, repeating the thing that Igor did, and advances on to the top 4. So anyway, we'll have the last group starting now. Drivers now are still practicing. In the meantime, you can obviously look at how the event is unfolding so far. Look at the drivers who are going to be in the last group. Some of them are, you know, Kirill Nikolaev, Artyom Matveev, Luigi, Alexei Olgin, one of the top qualifiers. So people like that. It is going to be interesting. And the most interesting bit is that we have the Forester guy in this group. Danil Kozlov is going to be trying his hands at the top 32 in his Forester in a very short time. Also, Luigi, other international driver, is going to be trying to understand what's going on, which is one of the difficult bits of this. He is driving the Lexus, and well, watching him right now, he's doing quite a good job of, you know, positioning the car where it needs to be. He does have some issues with, you know, corrections and stuff, but otherwise, very clean lead runs and so on. I haven't seen any of his chase runs, but in terms of leading, it is pretty good. Maybe a bit of yeah, lack of commitment somewhere. Especially I've seen the latest run from him, and again, talking about the initiation, if you do sort of play it safe and you end up being quite shallow on touch and go, 2, yeah, Chicago 2, it is going to be a deduction in terms of the style thing. Anyway, our first matchup is going to be Kirill Nikolaev and Yaroslav Banderov. They are both E92s. They're now switching it and going at it to find out who's the strongest. Yaroslav there having very good angle on the initiation, and Kirill was trying to follow him closely, which he sort of succeeds in, but he's just dabbing the handbrake to pull his car back, maybe a bit too much, and then going with less angle in the last turn to catch up to Yaroslav. They're both E92s, but they have different engines. One's an S55, one's an S54. I have no idea what the difference is, I have to be honest, because again, I'm not a BMW guy. But yeah, different engines, same platform. Maybe Yaroslav having a bit more sort of commitment into that first corner. Also, he's a bit of a meme guy because he's opening his bonnet all the time, like, I don't know, a fish analogy. It's suitable here, probably. Anyway, we are still waiting for the judges to decide whether, Kirill or Yaroslav. Well, it's not whether, one of them is going to be moving forward, or it is going to be one more time. Who knows? Again, yeah, talking about like same platforms and different sort of configurations. You have a lot of that in Drift Masters because, as I said in the beginning, I think, of the stream, you have a great variety of things there. The first car that comes to mind is Marko Zakryl's BMW F22 with a VW inline 4 engine, which is very interesting because it's not something that's been done before, as far as I know. And he made it work, well, somewhat, because he did break down quite a bit. But all the other BMW F22s had, 2JZ, a B58 or something like that. I do believe there were multiple. Anyway, they're going at it again, and Kirill Nikolaev, they're being more decisive on the initiation, which is a great thing to see. Yaroslav following him closely, but not having the acceleration out of 4/1, and still he makes it, yeah. So the one more time so far between these two is breaking the curse of one more time over aggressiveness. I think that's the first time someone went into an OMT battle and didn't overcook it. So well done to Kirill. And we're gonna see whether he can do the same sort of aggressive driving, turning it up for his chase run. Yaroslav there using all the track, very good initiation, but being off throttle and I think maybe dropping one tire there. Kirill having to back out of it and crashing into him multiple times, which thankfully doesn't upset Yaroslav's line too much. But yeah, Kirill somehow makes it work. Drifting is, of course, as a form of motorsport, it is a no-contact sport, technically. It says that in pretty much, I think, every rule book of a real-life competition. But, of course, because sort of the task for the chase driver is to be as close to the leader, inevitably you have contact, and whether it's lots of contact or just that little bit is a big difference. But rubbing is racing, as they say, and so a small bit of contact is no big deal. But when it sort of exceeds that line and becomes sort of hard bashing, that's a no-no in pretty much any competition. You're going to damage your car, you're going to damage the opponent's car, and possibly end the run, which is not something the drivers want, probably, and not something the people who watch the event want. So anyway, it is going to be another one more time, and going back at it again. We'll see if Kirill turns up the aggression even more, but yeah, he has quite sort of a safe approach there to the initiation. Yaroslav making quite a lot of corrections there on the concrete blocks to catch up to Kirill, and then again not having the pace, not having the acceleration out to 4/1 to 4/2 to follow Kirill. Interesting. Maybe it's the engine difference, maybe it's just again how you play with the throttle, how you use your car's inertia, and all the rest. Anyway, we'll see whether Yaroslav also sort of plays it somewhat safe on the initiation, or he makes it, well, it's not too safe, but it is quite safe. But using all the track, going very wide, and adjusting the angle greatly there. It is going to be a big mistake for Yaroslav, but Kirill still makes it work and catches up to him, although making a bit of contact in the process. So I think the rules here are pretty much the same as they are in real life, so you can't have more than 2 one more times, which means that if the outcome of this one more time is also one more time, then the winner will be decided by who is the higher qualifier. Again, because you can't have more than 2 one more times, and they've already done their 2 one more times. But maybe this time the outcome will be different, and it will be decided on the runs and not on the qualification protocol. Anyway, we shall see. Kirill was doing donuts. A large, part of this whole event thing is waiting, whether it's waiting for, the event to start, waiting for judges' decisions, waiting for your turn, if it's qualifying, especially if it's qualifying, because in these sorts of events you have quite a lot of people who compete, so it's like I think it was 60 people signed up for this round, which isn't too crazy, but it is still quite a lot. Not all of them actually took part, that is another thing, yes, but even so, a big part of this is you're waiting, just waiting and waiting, so you tune up to hear what the judges have to say on the briefing, for example. You listen to all of it, and then you just wait. You can, of course, bugger off and do whatever you need to do until the time comes for your run, or your runs. But it's sort of, you have to still check every now and then what's going on, because, of course, a lot of things can happen. There can be certain upsets in the schedule, Your run may come later than expected or sooner. It is also a possibility. And so as a result, you can't just sort of ignore everything and do your own stuff. Anyway, our next contenders are again, team most popular chassis in 92 and 15. It is going to be Mikhail and Artem finding out who's the strongest of the pair. I really like the transition there from Mikhail into touch and go 4/1, very aggressive, very good angle, and just pretty much what the judges instructed the drivers to do. So in that sense, yeah, kudos to him. It is a bit of an unusual matchup in terms of engines because it is an RB26 and an S54. So, of course, RB not that popular, largely because of the reliability issues, somewhat. I have heard that the blocks do crack when you push a certain amount of horsepower. But anyway, it doesn't really matter right now because we're in sim world and it doesn't play a role here. Mikhail diving on the inside to catch up with Tom, transitioning quite closely and accelerating nicely out of 4/1. Yeah, keeping very good proximity. So a strong chase run from Mikhail there. I also really like the initiation that Tom did because, again, yeah, that's pretty much what the judges instructed. The other thing is, if you do something like that in real life, of course, there are a lot of tracks where the initiation is sort of like big angle, big bucks, big buck, all that sort of stuff, big commitment. A lot of the times you're going to do that as a leader and you're skilled enough to do that, but someone's going to be behind you who isn't as experienced and he isn't going to make it. So yeah, that's another thing to keep in mind. A lot of people do transition from sim to real life driving and they sort of find it difficult sometimes because there are a couple of crucial differences between sim driving and real driving. In sim you have endless attempts at anything, well, not when it comes to competition, but you have endless practice as long as you have electricity in your house, you have internet and all of that. You can drive just up until the moment where your arms fall off or something like that. But in real driving you don't have that opportunity because you're limited by a budget, because any form of motorsport is exclusive to very rich people, and filling up your car with good petroleum and fitting good tires, which would be maybe not perfect, but yeah, still costs a lot of money. Anyway, we have rerun, so Mikhail is initiating quite nicely, but being sort of in the middle of touch and go 2, which isn't necessarily great, but still it's okay. Good transition again from him into touch and go 4/1, just like he did in the previous run, but unfortunately there is a bit of a moment there at the very end where Mikhail unfortunately crashes into the wall. Now, whether that's the fault of Artyom for following very closely, sort of pushing him around, or that's just Mikhail's fault of miscalculating his inertia, his speed, and the angle that he was going at, is down to the judges. They're gonna find that out. But that's going to be later, because now, of course, Miho is going to be the chase driver. And the lights say go. The car's pretty much the same on pace, at least in a straight line. Artem with a very good initiation again. I think that's what differentiates him from a lot of other drivers, because again, judges have said that it is a risk-taking sort of initiation. You have to be there on the wall, very close to the wall. That's the first thing. So not in the middle of the touch and go and sort of very safe, oh, I better not crash. No, you have to be on the wall and also big angle very quickly. So if you do that sort of initiation where you're sort of you have a couple of attempts at an initiation, so you have you only have the angle that you're going at through touch and go 2, like after touch and go 1. That is how a lot of people do it, so they have a lot of time when they're on the handbrake during the initiation, and that is a mistake. You have to be more decisive, you have to be more brave on the initiation, and judges said that it has to be a wow effect. Be it in the lead, in the chase, you have to make it count. Do a big initiation and just, express yourself. May it convince the judges that you are the one to go for. In the meantime, we have next set of drivers warm up their tires before the starting line. It's gonna be Luigi and Alexei Orgin. It is Alexis Ayas and a Nissan Laurel. Not necessarily unusual cars, but still less popular than some other ones we've seen before. Luigi, very, very fast initiation there, not going off the track. Very snappy transition into touch and go 3 and still doesn't crash into the wall. That was very impressive. And Alexei there just not having the pace, he's just nowhere. He's on the inside. He's just, quite far from, he was just, distant from the leader, and also all his attempts at catching up were sort of not very plentiful in terms of results. He started off quite well, but then he transitioned way too much on the inside. Probably he imagined that Luigi's gonna be maybe further ahead, or just there's gonna be some sort of speed difference and he's gonna have to catch up, but it didn't really happen. So it was way too much on the inside. Luigi had just a great lead run. It was very aggressive. It was just what the judges asked for. Very good transitions, very impressive initiation to start with. That's the first thing. He did a very big flick into the first corner. It was like probably the biggest flick I've seen through this whole. They are already at the higher RPM limits of their engine, so they don't really have the range, the RPM range, to maybe clutch kick the car and make it sort of go even further. Well, make a kick into drift in one direction to do flick, and then the other direction to actually initiate. Uh, so anyway, now that we've switched things around, we are gonna have another run, which is gonna be, of course, Luigi giving chase. There were some sort of you know, technical difficulties there, but yeah, we're waiting for everyone to get ready, you know, the judges and all the people involved. And let's see whether, you know, Alexei can actually do a run which would be similar in terms of aggressiveness to Luigi's run. That was like one of the biggest runs. But Luigi's left for some reason. So their run is going to be postponed because of some technical issues on Luigi's end. And we're going to have, well, Danilo Kozlov up against Alexander Kirkov. The Forester is back. It's again a delight to see an unusual chassis in drifting. He did pretty well in quali, but of course, tandems are a whole different thing. Again, big flick, big initiation on the brakes there and on the handbrake, and maybe slowing down a bit too much because he's shallow in touch and go too. Alexander Kirkov there adjusting the car a lot during his chase. And oh, wheel-to-wheel contact there, and another bit of contact at the end of the run. So again, some things to look at here. Obviously the wheel-to-wheel contact was probably the worst thing about it, but it is still like they completed the run, and they are now switching sides to go head-to-head one more time. Maybe it's not the last time, of course, but we're on six. But anyway, Alexander doing a flip, going way too fast. I think, yeah, he has gone off the track. But Daniel, oh, and he crashed into a wall. Maybe some connectivity issues because the car just carried on forward. And Daniel Kozlov doesn't have to complete the run because he's in the chase position, but it still does, again, using the runs as practice. Nothing bad about that. And well, that was quick. Ended quickly, you know, because of the leader's mistake and the leader sort of not willing to continue. It would be 0 anyway, because of course crashing into a wall is a big mistake. But well, Daniel got the win, so kudos to him. And now we're gonna have again the run of our two drivers from before. So it's gonna be Luigi and Alexei Olgin again, and Luigi is gonna be leading once more. Let's see if he can replicate that lead run from earlier, which was, you know, sort of one of the best runs we've seen so far, or at least in my opinion. And if he can do that, then of course he does have very high chance of moving forward. Very, very wide there. And again, Alexei, just like previously, doesn't have the pace to match. Dropping wheels there and just correcting the car a lot, but still not making enough progress. So interesting that Luigi has, seems like a lot more pace, but most of all, he has a lot more confidence about his runs than Alexei does. Now, it is going to be maybe a bit difficult for Luigi to chase if Alexei is that sort of unsure in his actions, but no, he's falling behind on the run-up. And Alexei there, well, he's going a bit wide as the leader and slowing down there in 3/2. But Luigi caught up to him quite quickly, and now he's hammering him in the last corner. So it's interesting that, you know, we've already sort of seen that Alexei had a big disadvantage in his chase, but Luigi's, for some mysterious reason, just sort of lost him on the run-up to initiation. It's just driving a lot slower. So I wonder what happened there. Maybe some sort of, again, misshifts or stuff like that. Maybe just way too much wheel spin while trying to get off the line as quickly as possible and you know, matching the leader's pace. Again, waiting for all the driver's decision there. And we'll see how they what they think, judges, of the mistake that Luigi made, sort of not being as fast as he could, because he demonstrated in his lead that he is quite rapid, but he just sort of lost. And it seems like it's gonna be a one more time. Luigi is warming up his tires. Again, maybe that's what gives him the bit of advantage in the first run, because Alexei isn't actually doing any of that. He's just sort of, you know, waiting at the line and probably thinking that the tire temperature that he has is going to be enough to match the pace of Luigi. But we'll see about that. Luigi there, again, doing his signature sort of initiation, but this time being very shallow and touching the two. Interesting. Alexei diving from across the track. They tried to catch up to Luigi, but sort of failing to do so. Luigi's very close to the edge of the track there. It was a bit risky. But again, Alexei not having the pace. But if this time Luigi can actually sort of accelerate with Alexei on the run-up, then I don't want to say it's in the bag, because it's not that simple, but he would give himself a much greater chance at being sort of the winner of this heat. He's again taking some space there. Yeah, he did match the pace on the run-up, but just going on a bit too hot and straightening out, and I wonder whether that would be a 0 on his end for his run. I mean, very close transition. Ooh, and contact there. So potentially Luigi has 2 zeros, maybe. One for... Well, not 2 zeros, but there are 2 zeros in this run. So 0 potentially for Luigi for stalling in the first corner. And then a 0 for Alexei for crashing into the wall and stopping. But that one was caused by Luigi crashing into him. Now, what that was caused by, that's a difficult thought process to follow, but trust me on this. Judges will still decide whether that's Luigi's fault, or maybe Alexei just sort of slowed down way too much there. So we have another set of drivers waiting there. It is going to be Nikolaev, Kirill, and Alexei actually Olgin got the win. So Kirill versus Artem Matveyev, both BMW 92s. Kirill going wide there off the circuit. Both red BMW E92s. Artem is giving a very aggressive chase so far. Going way too much on the inside there, I think. In 4/2. Contact was made, and the severity of it will be, of course, again decided by the judges. So a couple of mistakes here and there. So Kirill, I think, went wide by himself in the first corner, and Artem just having some maybe issues, sort of toning down the aggression level and stuff like that. For the second run, yeah, Artem is gonna be leading in this one, and it is again quite a safe initiation, but he doesn't run wide this time. But yeah, Kirill is very close. Very good transition. Doesn't make the same mistake that Artem did. He just sort of follows the leader's trajectory, doesn't impede him, doesn't crash into him. So this time around, a lot less mistakes on both sides, and it is difficult sort of to compare lead to lead, chase to chase in this regard, because Kirill's lead wasn't flawless, but at the same time, when he was leading, Artem was chasing, and Artem's chase really wasn't flawless. But then we compare it to Artem leading, his lead was probably better, but also Kirill's chase was better than Artem's chase. So a lot to unpack here and sort of try to understand who has the upper edge in what, and sort of what does that add up to. What sort of results are we getting out of these two very good drivers in the same car? Pretty much all. Kirill Nikolaev has his own car. It is from the driver's pack, and I don't really know about Artem, whether that's his car or it's public car or something. In the end, the judges decided that Artem's probably was the lead Maybe because no way his chase run got him the win. But anyway, what do I know? We have another matchup. It is gonna be the Forester of Danila Kozlov from earlier against Alexei Olkin in his Laurel. Two sort of unusual chassis there. Danila again playing it quite safe, but where's Alexei going? He's way too much on the inside, and he's cutting the track a lot to try to stay close, which he doesn't really manage, and he drops wheels and sometimes in the process gets into a lot of angles. For some reason he doesn't. I think he just had a bit of a moment there in Tachiko 4/2 where he sort of went to so much angle that he couldn't see the lead driver's car, and he had to pull the handbrake because he didn't know whether the leader was, you know, still in front of him or maybe behind him at that point. And of course that is a mistake. Alexei's, and he was again very much on the inside, but you can obviously understand him because he does seem to have a big sort of pace deficit compared to Danila. And oh, he goes way too hot. Danila has a great transition though. Alexei ruins his lead run even more by going very, very shallow along the concrete blocks and the concrete wall. Danila though using the left foot braking to stay close and not hit Alexei. So very good chase run, not a good lead run if I'm honest. Very big corrections, mistakes on the lead, on the line parts as well. Just sort of couldn't pull himself together to do the lead run, because even though he does have a pace deficit, trying to run away from the chase driver is in no sense a good decision, because if you have a pace deficit, you're definitely not going to run away. The only thing that's going to do is compromise your run, as we could see. In this particular example, Alexei compromised his run by sort of going very shallow at places and being just not where it needs to be. It's a good thing that, of course, Danilo didn't crash into him and still sort of made it. But anyway, now we have Danilo again against Artyom Matveyev. Big initiation by Danilo, staying within the white lines. Very snappy transition up to Dashenko 3/1. Artyom only catching up to him in the middle of that wall there, and you know, having less angle. You could say it even from a trackside camera, like Artyom was actively trying to stay with Danilo. He managed to do that, or at least for the last part of the track. He did have some issues in the very beginning, but you know, very, very solid lead run and a pretty solid chase run. I think, again, coming back to that point, that the initiation determines the result of the run. It will come down to whether Artyom can manage to do something close of an initiation to Danilo's, because Danilo's initiation was pretty much what the judges asked for. It was very snappy, it was into big angle, and he doesn't really do that, but he does very big angle, but I think he drops some tires in the process, which obviously isn't what you were asked to do. So Danilo still stays with him, and yeah, again, sacrificing a bit of angle, stays with Artyom up until the end. Yeah, mistakes were made, as they say. It is, again, clear that Danilo has faster car here, but still Artyom made some mistakes. Well, notably, of course, going wide in turn 1, which is heavily penalized by the judges. Again, as I said, in quali was 5 points off for one wheel and 10 points off for two wheels. So it's really not worth it going the extra mile to accelerate more and then try to slow the car down enough to still make turn one and not go off. It does take, of course, quite a lot of practice, at least for sort of an average driver, to get up to speed and understand, like, at what point do you have to initiate, at what speed, to still make the turn, to get all the touch and goes, to carry on this pretty much same angle through the first turn and up to the transition to the second one. But with enough practice, well, you can make it. You can, of course, you can do it. Especially considering that a lot of these drivers are driving on controllers. And so you don't get as tired driving on controller as you do driving on wheel. But anyway, that's besides the point. And it just seems like Danilo probably, yeah, does get the win because of the way that, after made mistakes trying to push his car to the limit and push himself to the limit, of course, as well. We're going to take a look at the brackets again. It is going to be top four of top four drivers out of their respective brackets. So out of the left top left corner we have Igor, the top qualifier. From the bottom left corner we have Alexander Kuskov. From the top right corner we have Ilnur, of course, in his beautiful S14. And lastly, from the bottom right corner we have Danila Kozlov. So we have I think I'm right in saying, yeah, we have four different cars. We have an E92 driven by Yegor. We have Alexis IS driven by Alexander Kuskov. We have Sylvia S14 driven by Nur. And lastly, the Forester driven by Danila. Welcome back to everyone who's still here. We have our top 4 drivers again from the corresponding brackets in the lobby, and they will be from the right. Who's the strongest of them all? We have, of course, everyone that you would expect to see here. And we have crashes, of course. It is something that you sort of can expect from these sort of things. But the top 4 drivers, again, as I said, all driving different cars. That's already interesting enough. And also, although the first 2 drivers from the qualification are both there, we still have like people like Kuskov Alexander, who wasn't in top, who is now finishing his run. Yeah. So in the meantime, I think we could look at how it all unfolded. Well, Igor did pretty easy. I believe he didn't have a single one more time, so he went through the whole events sort of one by one. All the drivers were beaten by him. Obviously, fair and square. He won, yeah, all the events. Oh, sorry, all the heats. And now he's going against Kuskov Alexander, who was the winner of his corresponding bracket. Big angle there from Igor. Alexander having to maybe back out of it a bit, but pushing him around, but giving him space to maneuver there in the transition, and accelerating out of touch and go 4/1. That was a very, very solid chase. He was sort of pressing Igor all the way through. Maybe the transition, the first transition, was a bit awkward, but we have to look at it again to get the better idea. It is, a transition where you can make up ground, of course, if you sort of shallow up on the angle and then shoot forward, maybe braking slightly with the clutch slips or left foot braking. You will be rewarded. But let's see what Igor can do. And yeah, Alexander initiating again to big angle, giving Igor space to chase him, and Igor does so. I'm not sure that he's as close as Alexander was. Very close to the edge of the track, though. For Igor, he didn't really have to go to such an extent to make himself close to the leader, but still committed, and commitment is pretty much always rewarded with good results. But at this point of the competition, of course, top 4 drivers, they do know how to initiate properly, big angle, all that sort of thing, and we see that from pretty much every run. And looking back at it, I think Igor did drop one wheel on the track there, outside of the track, but he still won and moves on to the finals. Now we have another battle of the top 4 unfolding here. It is Ilnur versus Danilo. Ilnur with another big entry, letting off the throttle though, I think a bit in touch and go too, and Danilo has to sort of make everything come together when catching up to him, and there's contact on the transition there, but still Ilnur finishes his run, doesn't spin to win, which is always worthy of praise, I guess. And yeah, these sort of like contacts on transition are of course very common in real life as well. Differences in a set of course, at least with these cars, the hitbox is the bumper, and it is pretty much like concrete. And in real life, most of the pro cars sort of semi-pro plastic or carbon Kevlar. Anyway, Danilo with a big initiation. Again, his signature thing is using the handbrake and the left foot brake to slow the car down in the braking zone. Ilnur is following him like a shadow, transitioning into the same angle as the leader. That was very impressive. And, well, shallowing up, of course, for the last corner to get as much proximity as it is humanly possible. But, yeah, very, very solid chase run by Ilnur. Of course, a great lead run by Danilo, but very, very good effort by Ilnur, because he made it so they stayed with the leader in the transitions. He didn't like have to shallow up too much on the angle to still sort of stay in the same time zone. And yeah, it does seem like the cars are pretty equal on pace, which always makes for great drifting. Very, very good spectacle. Because if you have one car which is much faster than the other, it's very hard to make it into a fair battle. It would have to be raining for that to be the case, but of course, these cars are relatively the same in terms of power. Whether you pick public cars from the car park, there's all around 500 horsepower. Some of the other cars that are more powerful, like the RX-7 that we've seen previously today, it is more powerful. It does have 700 horsepower, but in terms of balance, it is, well, largely the same in terms of pace, or maybe it is even like slower than some of the cars that have gone to the higher, stages of this competition today. Because, of course, the RX-7 driver didn't make it very far, to be honest. But we still haven't seen, well, we won't see him today. But I think Vadim Abramov, if he showed up in his RTR Mustang, it would be interesting to see how he would get on this track against these people who have, for the most part, they have pretty much, the exact same horsepower figure. And yeah, we see the graphic that Artem Matveyev actually wins. Oh, no, sorry, that's wrong. Anyway, we have our last run, which is going to be, yeah, Danila is going again very wide, but Alexander's not letting him go any much further away than he already is. Catching up on transition, giving him a tap on the door. Maybe it's just a bit more than a tap. Was, severe contact, but thankfully Danila didn't end up in the wall, which would, of course, ruin his run entirely. So yeah, both drivers made it to the finish line. Alexander, they're using a lot of tyre, interestingly. A lot of tyre going back to the start line. Let's see if that plays a part in the second run of the heat. Here we go. So Danila staying very close, maybe a bit frustrated by that movement of Alexander's car, but still matching the angle. Maybe not being too close, maybe not knocking on his door, but he's making his car lost on the transition a bit, having to readjust his car's angle and catch up to Alexander. So maybe he was lacking there a bit. Again, Danilo, yeah, had pretty much the same angle on the wall there, and as a result he just couldn't catch up to Alexander there. And yeah, as a result there was a bit of separation between the cars. So now we have Igor Roshkov and Ilnur going at it. The first qualifier against the second place qualifier. Two red cars. Similarities and there. And Ilnur can making these transitions that he's been making the whole event, where it's all very calculated, it's all very under control. You can look at that transition into touch and go 4/1. That was mastery. You can use the car's ability to sort of rotate around, maybe not instantaneously, but sort of it would be a process of rotating around, and Ilnur does that. So when he slows down in that transition from 3/3 to 4/1, he is making it more of a process than an instantaneous event. Initiating now for Ilnur in the lead position. Igor making very close transition, but he's a bit of on the inside. He's left foot braking that, keep the car on more of an outside line. And now transitioning for the final time and banging on the door of that beautiful S14. Very good matchup and very good set of runs. Maybe Igor there having a bit of a moment where he had to slow the car down because he went a bit too much on the inside. But other than that, it was just such a good chase run. Of course, that's given that it was a good lead run. That's without a question or shadow of doubt, that is true. But again, as I talked about this previously, the chase run is sort of more of a powerful tool to show the judges that you are sort of the favorite out of the two. And Igor there demonstrating that he can be just as close as Ilnur, maybe even closer at certain points, because Ilnur, well, he had a great transition into the touch and go by the name of 3/1, but Igor's one was almost unbelievable. And even though he had to adjust the car's speed by left foot braking, because he was on a shallower line, he was on the inside, he didn't lose the leader in the process of doing so, and made it stick, which is what you want. And that is, we could see, like, from all the runs that were done today, that that is the point where a lot of stuff is decided. So now Igor is taking the win, so drivers are gonna be, posing. In some sense, it is posing for some pictures of the final three drivers. So yeah, the podium finishes are going to be, of course, posted on our Discord and in the Telegram as well, I believe. Yes, having some having some issues deciding who's going where, but we have all the three drivers in place. They're going to be standing in the corresponding order. It's not very straight, but, it works, I guess. It is great, again, to see three different cars. Especially the Forester, it looks like it doesn't belong here, of course, because initially it's a 4x4 sort of family van of some sort. Well, it is an SUV, but you get the idea. It's a massive thing, you can see, even though this one is lowered significantly, it is still like a lot higher than the other two. But congratulations, of course, to the 3 drivers that have finished on the podium. Well, in fact, to everyone who has competed today. You can see the bracket now to sort of look who's finished where. Of course, Igor. Again, I'm going to repeat Igor. Our top qualifiers finished first in the tandems as well. That is just a confirmation of its excellence. Then we have Ilnur in second place and Daniela in third. So, yeah, I think it's been a rather successful event. I've seen some great qualification runs, and that's still some banger tandem runs, which were sort of, some of them were with unexpected outcomes, some of them were just a demonstration of precision and all of that. Outright aggression and dedication, which is always great to see. The track, of course, played a big part in that. It is sort of inviting you to do all of that. But yeah, that is gonna be the end of our test round. And again, thank you for all the people who have supported us, all the companies. You can check out DUDAREV Motorsports, Zoom Racing, MAKAROV Design, Drift News, our Drift School, and our ISDCC Works team, who will make you a car of your liking, or a livery, in fact. You can find out more on our Discord and Telegram. So I guess we'll see